An unmarked trail near Dry Fork Canyon hides a terrifying secret some hikers never return. You're listening to ASMR 404 Found. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. I shouldn't be alive to tell you this. I shouldn't even remember most of it, but somehow I do. And now that it's in me, I can't sleep without hearing the screams. You're probably here because you've heard about the Devil's Ladder. Maybe some backcountry hikers told you it was just an old logging trail in Utah's Uintas. Or maybe you're one of those Reddit urban explorers digging through old trails for something that feels off the grid. I was that idiot once. Thought I was smarter than warnings and smarter than local myths. I learned the hard way. That trail isn't just haunted, it's hungry. It was the fall of 2022 when I first heard about it. A buddy of mine, Marcus, who'd been working as a seasonal ranger near Ashley National Forest, mentioned this unlisted trail that wasn't on any official maps. Just a broken wooden signpost, barely visible from the dirt road that runs east past Dry Fork Canyon. He said he didn't know the name of it, but a local hunter called it Devil's Ladder, supposedly, because it climbs so steep and jagged it's like you're going up to meet the devil himself. That kind of pitch was like catnip for me. I had a small YouTube channel back then. Low subscriber niche outdoor content, mostly solo hiking, abandoned places, survival challenges, not horror. Not until this, so I planned a 2-night solo on Devil's Ladder. Packed light, brought my Canon, 2 trail cams, a mic, my emergency beacon, and about 30 hours of SD card space. I didn't even tell Marcus I was going in. Thought it would be more fun to surprise him with the footage after. I found the trailhead just before noon. The sign was almost gone. Warped grey wood with a rusted bolt sticking out where a plaque might have been. But if you looked close, you could see the faint carving burned in DL. The air was wrong the moment I stepped through the overgrowth. Not cold, not hot, just stale, like a vacuum had sucked the breeze out of the trees. Even the pine needles seemed to sit perfectly still. I told myself it was just because it was an old-growth section, but the silence went deeper than that. No bird, no bugs. Even my own footsteps felt padded, like the dirt was swallowing the sound. About 30 minutes in, I found the first marker. It was a rope. No joke, someone had tied a thick, rotting rope between 2 trees, about 10 feet up, hanging, like a slack clothesline. From it dangled dozens of small wooden carvings, each one shaped like a human figure, some headless, some armless, some with crude black paint for eyes and mouths, none of them more than 6 inches tall. I stopped, filmed, spoke softly to the mic like I usually did, tried to keep my tone casual, curious, but my skin was crawling. It was the kind of horror you'd expect in some Appalachian legend, not the high Uintas. I should have turned back right then. But you know how stories like this go. The incline steepened quickly after that. The trail wound upward through switchbacks that grew narrower and more uneven with every turn. The trees grew denser too, not natural, almost like they were closing, pish in around me. Around 4 p.m., I reached a clearing where I set up a base. I picked a spot with a little vantage point that overlooked a dry gulch below. Got my tent pitched, gear organized, water filtered. Sunlight was already slipping through the trees like honey. Then the noises started. It began with what I thought was wind through the trees, but the air was still dead. No movement. Then it shifted, turned into a low whistling, not from above, but from ground level. It circled my camp once, then again. I froze with the mic in hand, holding my breath. The third time it circled, it stopped right behind my tent. I spun around. No one, nothing. Then something darted across the gulch below. I caught it on camera, barely. It looked like a person crawling, on all fours, but too fast. The limbs bent wrong, like the joints were reversed. It moved like a spider trying to mimic human motion. I rewound and slowed the clip. Frame by frame, I watched it. White skin, long fingers, no face. Just a round bald head and two hollow indentations where eyes should have been. I didn't sleep that night. Just laid there with my knife in one hand and bear spray in the other, counting every crunch of leaf outside. The sounds kept up all night, sometimes close, sometimes far, but never stopping at dawn. I packed everything and pushed on. I told myself it was an animal, maybe a mountain lion with mange, maybe a bear cub with some freak deformity. But even I didn't believe that by midday I found the cabin. It wasn't marked on any map, didn't look modern either. Built from thick, untreated logs and sun-bleached planks, probably pre-1900s. The roof had half caved in, but the door still hung intact. Hanging above it was another rope with carved wooden figures, this time nailed directly into the logs. Inside was wrong. There was furniture, a broken table, some chairs, a rusted bed frame with no mattress, blackened fireplace, but also dried blood. Not fresh, not wet, but soaked deep into the wooden floorboards, and something carved into the far wall. I still have the photo. It read, 3 days and the woods take you back. I stood there, trying to make sense of it. Then I heard the door close behind me. I turned fast. No one was there. But now the light outside had shifted. The trees looked taller, the sky darker, and when I stepped back out, the trail was gone. I mean, gone. The path I came in from was now just solid trees. No opening, no switchback, no track marks, just endless trunks. I ran, not calmly, not like a hiker. I ran like someone who knew something ancient and wrong had just reset the map around them. I looped, I screamed. I left gear behind just to move faster. By sunset, I was deeper in than before, and that's when I found the others, not alive, not dead either. They stood in a circle, frozen like mannequins, at least 6 of them, all wearing old hiking clothes from different decades. One looked like he was from the 1970s, canvas pack, flannel boots with metal eyelets. Another wore neon nylon like it was the early 2000s. But they weren't moving, just standing, heads tilted back, eyes black and sunken, skin ashy like burnt paper. When I stepped closer, they all turned in unison to face me. I ran again, didn't stop until I hit water, some kind of black creek that reeked like rotting meat. On the other side, I saw the old sign again, DL, same rotted post, same trailhead. I had looped back, but my watch said 38 hours had passed, and the sun hadn't moved at all. When I finally made it out, my camera footage was corrupted, every file blacked out, every audio clip overwritten with static and whispers. Only one clip remained, me standing in front of the cabin, eyes wide, mouth open, repeating something over and over. 3 days and the woods take you back. I haven't hiked since. I don't sleep more than 2 hours a night, and sometimes I still see the figures in my backyard, just standing there, motionless, watching, waiting. The next few days blurred into one long stretch of dread. I left the forest physically, but not mentally. My friends thought I had food poisoning. I told them I hit altitude sickness, dehydration, hallucinations. But even I didn't believe my own cover story. I knew what I saw. I knew what I felt in that forest. It wasn't just fear. It was possession. Marcus came by a few days later. He'd heard from someone that I was up in the Uintas. I could see it in his eyes when I opened the door. He knew I wasn't okay. He brought beer, sat down in my living room, and just waited. Until I started talking, I told him everything. Showed him the footage that had survived the few glitched-out clips, the looped whispering. He stared at the one still image of the cabin wall, that message carved deep into the timber. 3 days, and the woods take you back. He didn't say a word for a full minute. Then he told me something that chilled me even more than the trail had. That trail never had a name, no one logged it. No ranger ever claimed it existed. But Marcus remembered an old seasonal worker, back in 2010, who went missing in that same area. His name was Elias K., a Utah native survivalist and botanist. He'd been doing a soil survey around Dry Fork. When he vanished, the search team never found a body. What they did find, though a week later, was his camp intact, half-eaten food still on the stove, tent zipped shut, no sign of struggle. Only one item was found 50 yards away, hanging from a tree branch, a small wooden figure, carved crudely, with arms missing and eyes burned in. When Marcus told me that, I stood up and vomited into the sink. I couldn't explain why, but my gut knew Elias never left that forest, and he wasn't the only one. Over the next few weeks, I couldn't stop researching. I went deep, dug into old ranger logs, back issues of Uinta County newspapers, blog posts from backcountry explorers. Most of it led nowhere, until I found a strange forum thread posted in 2006, archived and nearly wiped from the internet. A thread titled, "Never Follow the Rope." The post was short, just a few lines from someone with a username Goatman74. It said, "If you see the rope with the dolls, turn back. If you hear the wind circle, cover your ears. Don't stay more than 3 nights. That place isn't part of our forest. It grows outward when you walk in, and it doesn't like to be seen." There were no replies. I spent the next month trying to pretend it was over. I stopped uploading to my channel, quit hiking. But the thing about that place, it doesn't leave you alone. The dreams started first. Trees pressing in, faces watching. That high whistling noise circling me while I slept, always stopping at the same moment, right behind my ear. Sometimes I'd wake up to my bedroom window open. Sometimes I'd find pine needles on the floor when I hadn't left the house. And then the trail came back. One morning, I walked outside to grab the paper and saw something tied between 2 trees on my neighbor's lawn. A rope 10 feet up, hanging wooden figures swaying gently in the breeze. They weren't there the night before. That was when I knew it wasn't over, and I wasn't supposed to have left. I don't know if it's because I stayed less than 3 days, or because I spoke its name on camera, but that place had marked me. I tried burning the footage, deleting everything, but the files wouldn't erase, and the whispers only got louder. They didn't speak English. Not exactly. It was guttural, primal, like something older than language was trying to claw through my brain. Then came the worst part. I started seeing myself in the background of old videos. Not current me, not who I was now, but something like me, standing in shadows just out of frame, wearing the same clothes I wore that day on the trail, same backpack, same knife at the hip, but the face was wrong. No eyes, just sunken pits. And that same round, bald head I saw crawling in the gulch. I lost it. Checked myself into a clinic in Ogden for a week. Told them I was having a breakdown. They kept me sedated, under observation. Made me journal everything. One night, a nurse left the room door open, and I heard something from the hallway, whistling, slow, circular, like something circling the building. I discharged myself the next day and drove straight to Marcus. Told him I had to go back. I didn't know why, but something in my blood was pulling me toward that trail again. Not to escape, but to stop it. Marcus didn't argue. He didn't even ask questions. He just looked me dead in the eyes and said, "We go at first light." I didn't realize then how much he knew, or what he'd seen. We left before dawn, brought gear. Backup comes old maps. Marcus brought a deer rifle. I brought trail markers and salt. I don't know why, just instinct. The drive to Dry Fork was silent. No music, no banter, just the sound of tires on gravel and the occasional coyote in the brush. When we got there, the sign was gone. No DL, no rope, just unbroken forest. But we both saw the shimmer, that strange shimmer in the air, like heat waves from asphalt, right between 2 trees. That's where we stepped in, and it was waiting for us. The forest was exactly as I remembered, too quiet, too still, like time had collapsed in on itself. Our watches spun randomly. GPS froze. Marcus marked a tree with bright orange tape, but it peeled off and turned gray in seconds. We moved fast. No stopping, no filming. Just down the trail, past where I saw the rope, through the switchbacks. Then the trail started changing. The ground pulsed beneath our boots. Like a heartbeat, the trees shifted, literally moved. I turned back to Marcus and saw his face had gone pale. He whispered, "This place isn't forest, it's skin." I didn't ask what he meant, because I knew the deeper we went, the more the woods began to feel alive. Not metaphorically, literally. The bark was veined, the moss pulsed, and that black creek, it ran upstream now. The water didn't reflect, just absorbed light like tar. We reached the cabin by nightfall. It looked the same, rotted roof, fireplace, blood-soaked floor. But this time, the figures hanging from the wall were larger, human dash-sized, still faceless. But their clothes looked modern. One of them wore my old hiking boots. Marcus turned to me, dead serious, and said, "You see that one on the end?" I nodded. He said, "That's Elias." We stayed in the cabin overnight, didn't sleep, just waited. And that's when the trees began whispering. They didn't speak to the ears. They spoke directly into the chest. Vibrations that said things no human language could hold. Desires, hungers, memories of something before humans ever walked. Upright, the rope figures danced in the rafters without wind. And Marcus looked at me and said, "It wants you back. It wants you to finish." I asked him, "Finish what?" But he didn't answer, because now Marcus's eyes were black. I stared into Marcus's face and knew right away it wasn't him anymore. His body was there. His voice still moved with that calm, familiar cadence. But behind the eyes, nothing. No flicker of thought. No recognition. Just a reflection of the trees. I backed away slowly, 1 foot at a time, toward the cabin wall, trying not to show the panic crawling up my throat. But Marcus just stood there, not blinking, not breathing heavy, not doing anything but watching me, like he was waiting for a signal I couldn't see. And then I heard it. A second set of footsteps, from the far side of the cabin, past the fireplace, slow, wet, unnatural. They dragged like skin against bark. Marcus didn't turn his head when it entered. He just said in a low, distant whisper, "You shouldn't have come back." What came through the wall wasn't shaped like a person. Not anymore. It had the bones, but none of the boundaries. Its limbs were long bent the wrong way, jointless. In some places, and over-jointed in others. The face had no features, just folds of stretched flesh pulled over something deeper, something pulsing. Its skin was etched with carvings, not symbols, but names. Dozens, hundreds of them, flayed into its flesh, like it had consumed every person that stepped through that trail and kept a piece of their identity under its skin. It didn't speak, but I understood what it wanted. It wanted me to kneel. I don't know how I knew, but the moment my knees buckled, I felt a heat pour through my skull like acid, like it was reading every moment I ever lived and pulling it apart, piece by piece. I saw flashes, my first steps, my mother's face, the mountain, trails I'd hiked alone, the girl I loved who died in college, every moment of pain, shame, longing, every buried secret. All of it played back to me in silence, and the longer it played, the more I felt something being drained. I looked down at my hands. They were turning gray, veins blackening, fingertips cracking like wood. I screamed. The thing tilted its head, not out of curiosity, out of disappointment. That's when Marcus moved fast. He lunged at it with the knife we brought, drove it into its side, not out of hope, out of sacrifice. The moment the blade sank into that flesh, the entire cabin screamed, not sound, vibration. Every log, every rope figure, even the air itself vibrated like a siren from beneath the earth. The creature reeled backward, flailing into the fireplace. A burst of black fire erupted, but it didn't burn with light. It absorbed it. Marcus turned to me, blood pouring from his eyes, and said, "Run, now." I couldn't move. The air was thick. My legs were stiff. My mouth filled with dirt. But then I saw something in Marcus's eyes again. Just a flicker. Whatever had taken hold of him loosened for that moment, and he used it to hurl a flask of salt directly into the flames. Everything went white, not bright white, a vacuum, no sound, no time, no gravity, just me and the void, and 1,000 whispering voices spiraling away from me into the dark. When I woke up, I was alone, outside the cabin. Only now the cabin wasn't there. The trees were still, the air clean, the sky back to normal. I looked at my watch. It said 10:42 a.m. The same time it said the moment I stepped through the trailhead. The first time I made my way back down the slope. Every step I expected to be pulled back, but the trail didn't move. The ground didn't pulse. The rope figures were gone. At the base of the trailhead, the signpost had returned. The DL was burned in deeper now, and nailed to it was Marcus's knife, still covered in that black eye showar. I drove back to town in silence, turned my phone on. 8 missed calls from my sister, 3 from my boss. The date said July 14th. I had been gone for 5 weeks. I tried to report what happened, but no one believed it. No one ever does. The footage was corrupted. Again, only one thing remained. Still photo of Marcus inside the cabin. Only now, the carving on the wall behind him didn't say 3 days and the woods take you back. It said one must stay or the forest follows. I left Utah the next day, sold everything, moved east, changed my number, stopped hiking, but I still feel it sometimes. At night, when I look out the window, dot trees where there weren't any before, shadows on the ceiling that don't match the furniture, and sometimes I see a rope tied between 2 trees in the alley behind my building, with small wooden figures hanging. One bile of them wears a flannel shirt, the same one I wore that day. I don't know how long. I have before the trail finds me again. But I know this, that forest isn't a place. It's a decision. Once you step in, something steps into you, and it never leaves. So if you're ever hiking in northern Utah and come across an unmarked trail with an old wooden post and the letters D.L. burned in, turn round. Because you don't find Devil's Ladder, it finds you. I was never supposed to see the trail marker. It was raining when I passed through the old ranger station just east of Piseco Lake, way out in the Adirondack backcountry. I had planned a 4-day solo hike along the Northfield Placid Trail, a peaceful, quiet stretch that cuts through some of the most untouched wilderness in New York. Nothing intense, nothing extreme, just me, the forest, and some new trail cam gear I'd been meaning to test for my channel. But right after I passed the marker for mile 12, I noticed something strange off to the left. The trees were a little too straight. The soil looked bolder. A weathered wooden sign leaned at an awkward angle beneath a blanket of moss and vine. I stopped, brushed it clean. Lostman's hollow TRILCAD. There were no trailblazers, no arrows, no mention of this route in the forest preserve maps I'd studied for weeks. But the moment I looked down that path, I felt something click in my chest, like a subtle pressure in the lungs. Not pain, just pull. Some people call it a thin place. That's what I've read since then. A spot where the fabric between this world and something else gets real thin. And when you stand in it, you feel seen. I don't know what pulled me toward it. Curiosity, maybe. Or the silence. Or the way the rain didn't touch the ground past the signpost. Whatever it was, I stepped off the main trail. And the moment my boots left the gravel and hit that sunken soil, the woods swallowed the sound behind me, and the trail behind me disappeared. I turned fast, looked back, but where I'd stepped from, just seconds earlier, there was nothing but trees, no gravel, no split. Just untouched forest stretching endlessly backward. I tried retracing my steps, walked back 30 yards, 40, still nothing. That's when I knew this wasn't just a forgotten path. The woods didn't want me to leave. The first hour, I convinced myself I had misread the direction. I dropped GPS pins, left bright orange, surveyor's tape every 100 feet, and kept my head down. But the further I went, the less sense it all made. The ground was spongy, like something beneath the dirt was moving slowly. The trees leaned together in crooked arches. Every 10 minutes, I saw something hanging. Not wildlife, not gear, but artifacts. An old boot nailed to a trunk, a glass mason jar filled with teeth, a length of human hair braided and pinned to a birch branch. Still, I pushed forward. That's who I was back then, relentless, stubborn, a storyteller. I found the first shelter before nightfall. It looked hand-built, logs, moss-backed seams, rusted nails, probably constructed by a survivalist or trapper decades ago. Inside was a makeshift cat, some old books, and a steel coffee pot long since corroded on the wall. Carved deep into the wood were 3 lines. This trail wasn't made for walking. You're not lost, you're chosen. Don't look in the trees after dark. The sun dropped fast that night, like unnaturally fast. 1 second, golden light peeked through the canopy. The next, pitch black. I set up my tent near the shelter and turned on my headlamp, laid still for hours, listening. I didn't hear owls. I didn't hear wind. I heard clicking dot from high in the trees. Not bugs, not bats. The rhythm was too deliberate, almost like someone clacking their fingernails against dry bark. It moved overhead, circling the tent, slow and methodical. Every time I clicked off the light, the sound got closer. Every time I clicked it back on, it stopped. At some point near 2 a.m., I fell asleep out of sheer exhaustion. But in the dream I saw faces high in the canopy, dozens of them, pale, unmoving, their mouths locked open in silent screams. When I woke up, my boots were filled with river mud, and I hadn't been near water. I tried retracing my route back toward the trailhead. The orange markers I'd left were gone, completely gone. Even the GPS pins I dropped on my phone were wiped clean. It was like I'd never been there. That's when I realized I hadn't just gotten turned around. I had crossed into something. The days that followed got worse. I found bones, not animal, human, half buried in moss, wrapped in old canvas, with strange, black symbols drawn on the ribs in ashdot. I found a compass carved into a stump, but every direction pointed inward at one point. I walked past the same rotted canoe 3 times in a row, hours apart. It had a name painted on the side in cracked white lettering, M. Gregson. I later looked that name up. Marcus Gregson was Banger, who went missing in 1981. He vanished while doing an off-map survey near Piseco Lake. Search and rescue found no trace, only a radio signal repeating his name every 24 hours. They never found the source by the 3rd night. The trail had changed completely. It wasn't even a path anymore. It was a trench. The earth had split into a narrow gulch, maybe 10 feet deep, and I had to climb through it. The sides pulsed with DAMP roots. Worms crawled in patterns across the walls, forming lines that didn't seem natural. I came across another structure, not a cabin this time, a kind of altar. It was made from vertebrae and long femurs, clean, arranged in a spiral. At the center was a skull, not human, not animal. It had far too many teeth, and it looked wet, like it had just been pulled from a throat. I turned to run. I tripped and landed face first in the mud. When I got up, someone had carved letters across my arm, not deeply, just surface level, enough to bleed lightly, enough to sting. That night, I tried not to sleep, but the forest lulled me into it, and I saw them again, the faces in the trees. But this time, they spoke. No mouths moved, but their words filled the air. No one leaves the hollow. They leave a copy. I woke screaming. My tent was gone. My pack slashed open. My camera still rolled. The footage was clear while I slept. Something stood over me. Its body was tall, gaunt, wrapped in bark and sinew. Its face was blank skin with two wide pits where the eyes should be. It leaned close to my chest, as if listening to my heartbeat. Then it stood upright and pointed north. That's where I went. I don't know why I didn't feel in control anymore. The forest was inside me. I walked until I had reached the final structure. An old fire tower, collapsed, rotted, but the foundation still stood. Scorched symbols covered the base. Bones lined the stairwell. At the top platform, I found a book, wrapped in waxed cloth, pages inked in blood. They were stories, dozens of them, from people who never returned. Hikers, rangers, campers. Each story ended with the same phrase: the hollow keeps what it copies. My name was on the last page, written in fresh ink. That's when I saw the figure climbing the broken steps below me. Same clothes, same pack, same scar on my chin. It looked up at me and it smiled. Not like I smile, not human. It was trying. That was the last thing I remember before I blacked out. When I woke again, I was outside the original ranger station, covered in dirt and blood, my bag intact, my camera untouched. But when I checked the footage, I wasn't in any of it. Not once, only that other version of me, smiling, waving, calling into the trees. I didn't go straight home. After waking outside the ranger station with the pack slung neatly beside me, and the memory of what I saw in the fire tower still burning behind my eyes, I drove for hours. No music, no radio, just white knuckles and the hum of the engine under my feet. I stopped at a roadside diner off Route 30 and sat at a booth in the back. The waitress asked what I wanted 3 times before I could understand her. My ears were still ringing, my shirt still damp with something that wasn't mine. She brought coffee and toast. I didn't touch them. In the bathroom mirror, I barely recognized myself. My skin looked pale, eyes sunken, hair matted with dried pine needles. But that wasn't what froze me. It was the reflection behind me, over my shoulder, near the door. I saw a tall figure, half my height again. No face, just folds of damp bark and a crooked neck. When I turned around, nothing was there. But the door frame held a streak of mud 6 feet high. Still wet, still fresh. I left without paying. I stayed at a motel an hour south. Couldn't sleep. Not with the sound outside the window. Not wind. Not traffic. It was clicking. The same clicking I heard in the trees. I stayed up all night reviewing the camera footage, from the moment I stepped off the marked trail to the moment I blacked out in the fire tower. There was only one person ever seen, the version of me that wasn't really me. That same figure, smiling just a little too wide, standing behind trees I had walked past. Sitting on rocks I'd never touched, at one point in the video, just after I tripped at the altar. It leaned over my unconscious body and pressed something into my mouth. I rewound it dozens of times. Its hand unfolded, black fingers coated in sap dot, and it placed a tooth on my tongue. When I checked my molars, one was gone. I still don't remember losing it. The next day, I called my sister, told her I was okay, told her I'd taken a few days longer. Because of the weather, she bought it. But when I got home, something was off. My door was unlocked. My front hall smelled like moss. I thought maybe I was losing it. Paranoia, trauma I'd read about, post-isolation psychosis. People who spend too long alone in the wilderness. Their brains start inventing threats just to fill the silence. But this wasn't silence. This was intrusion in my bedroom. I found pine needles on the pillow, not just a few, a ring of them, like a crown, and a piece of torn paper pinned to my headboard. It read, "The Hollow sends its regards." I screamed, ran out into the street barefoot. My neighbor across the road, Mrs. Delaney, came outside to help. I told her someone had broken in. She called the police. They found no fingerprints, no sign of forced entry, nothing missing, except for every mirror in the house cracked, not shattered, not smashed, just cracked in a perfect spiral pattern. That night I went back to the footage again. This time I slowed it, frame by frame, starting at the beginning of the trail, around the 20-minute mark. Just after I first stepped into Lostman's hollow, I saw something I had missed in one single frame. Just before the GPS froze, the camera glitched, and for a split second, I saw my own face reflected in a tree knot. But it wasn't moving with me. It blinked. I went weeks without sleeping more than 2 hours at a time. Every time I did, I dreamed of the fire tower, not as it was when I saw it, but as it once had been. New, tall, intact. Dozens of people stood at the base, all with blank faces, all staring up at something I couldn't see. One night, I heard footsteps on my roof, not squirrels, not raccoons, heavy, deliberate. They walked across the shingles, paused above my bedroom, and then came the voice, not loud, not clear, clear, just a whisper, pressed into the wall from the outside. It didn't stay, so something else did. I moved, packed a duffel, left town, rented a small cabin upstate, far away from the hollow, from the woods, from anything that might remind me of what happened. It helped a little, until I got mail, no return address, no stamp, just a plain envelope slipped through the door. Inside, one thing, a photo of me, sleeping. But the photo was taken inside the fire tower, and in the background was the other me, the smile wider now, the eyes black, the teeth sharper than mine had ever been. He was waving, and behind him, through the broken wall, stood the same pale faces I had seen in the trees that first night. I burned the photo, but the next morning, another one arrived. This time, it was of my sister, shopping for groceries, smiling, and behind her, 3 aisles back, blurry but unmistakable, was the copy. Watching. He had followed me out, not alone. I tried contacting researchers, experts in folklore, psychologists, paranormal investigators. One of them An old man who claimed to study geographic thresholds told me the Hollow was one of the oldest stories he had ever encountered. A wound in the land, a place where identity was not protected, where the forest didn't just consume people, it replaced them. He asked how long I had stayed inside. I told him 4 nights. He shook his head and said I was lucky. Most don't last past 3. He said the 4th night is when they make the mold. I asked him what that meant. He said they build a version of you, but not out of flesh, out of memory. The pieces you leave behind, blood, hair, breath. The Hollow takes it all and makes between. I asked what I was supposed to do. He said, you're not supposed to do anything. That's why it wins. After the old man warned me about the 4th night, I asked him where the Hollow began, if it had a source. He said no one knew for sure, but one thing was consistent. No one who entered came back exactly the same. Some never came back at all. Some returned and lived quiet lives until strange things began happening. Disappearances, whispers in their homes, mirrors turning dark, and loved ones forgetting them entirely. I asked him why the trail wasn't closed, why people were allowed near it. He said, because most people don't make it past the bend. The ones who do are chosen. I didn't like the way he said chosen. I drove home in silence. The windows stayed up, the radio off. At a rest stop on I-84. I looked at my reflection in a vending machine glass. My eyes blinked too slow. I turned and walked fast back to the car. But before I could get in, I saw something scrawled into the dust on the rear windshield. Who's driving, really? I wiped it clean and drove the rest of the way with a hand over the rearview mirror, back in the cabin. I made a plan. If I went back into the Hollow, maybe I could destroy whatever had been left behind. The body they'd made, the copy. I knew where the altar was. I knew where the fire tower had stood. Maybe if I burned what remained, I could sever the tie. Maybe I could be normal again. But when I got to the trailhead 2 days later, something had changed. There was a fence, not a standard one. This was woven, made from branches, bone, and wire. No signs, no warnings, just a handmade wall around the trail entrance. Like the woods had closed their own gate. I climbed it anyway. Inside, the air felt colder than I remembered. Not sharp, just empty, like something had sucked all the heat and sound out of the forest. The birds didn't sing. The trees leaned a little too far toward the path. My boots made no noise against the soil. I followed the trail deeper than last time, past the stone circle, past the place I had tripped. The altar was gone. Only a shallow crater remained. Inside the crater, something was twitching. I didn't go down to look. I kept walking, trying to find the fire tower, or whatever was left of it. But I couldn't. The woods were folding in on themselves. I marked trees with chalk as I passed, and minutes later I'd pass the same marks again. The trail changed while I was on it. At one point, I passed a man sitting cross-legged in the middle of the path. His skin was bone white. His eyes were shut. His mouth was open. But instead of a tongue, there was moss growing from it. I stepped around him carefully. He didn't move. But when I looked back from 50 yards away, P was standing, still facing the other direction, still motionless, just standing. I found the clearing, eventually, where the tower had stood. Now there was only a single charred beam sticking out of the earth like a gravestone. Something was tied to it, a burlap sack. I approached slowly. Inside the sack was my backpack, the one I had lost. Every item exactly where it had been, except one addition. A strip of paper, weathered, burned around the edges, written in the same handwriting as the first. Note pinned to my bed. There is no hollow, only reflections. I turned around, and I saw myself standing at the tree line. No smile this time. He looked tired, pale, sick. He raised his hand and pointed behind me. When I turned, there was a mirror nailed to the beam, where my reflection should have been. I saw him, not the man behind me, but a third version, a hybrid. His face was mine but stretched, sagging bark growing up from the jaw, eyes pulsing with veins that didn't belong to me. And then I realized that was the real one, the original, the thing that had never left the hollow. And the two of us, the one standing near the trees and me, we were copies, fractured replications of something the forest had copied over and over again, until none of us knew who we were. That's when the other me screamed, not a normal scream, a roar like branches snapping under pressure, like a deer choking on its own breath. He ran toward me. I ran too, not back to the trail, but into the trees. They folded around me, pressed in like jaws, and I crashed through roots and underbrush until the sounds stopped. When I looked back, I was alone again. No reflection, no copy, no beam. I was somewhere else. At first I thought it was night, but the sky was still pale. It just looked dark because the trees here were different, twisted, ancient, listening. I collapsed, woke up hours later under a tree with no leaves in my hand. Clenched tight was my molar, the one the thing had placed on my tongue days ago. I walked for hours. Eventually I came to a road. A ranger truck passed by, and I flagged it down. The man asked who I was, where I'd been. I gave my name. He went pale. He said, "You're not supposed to be here. We found your body last week." I asked him what he meant. He said, "We pulled you from the base of the fire tower. Broken neck ID in your pack. It was ruled an accident." I laughed, thought he was joking. But when I showed him my ID, it didn't look right. The photo was slightly off. The date of birth was mine, but the expiration date was 10 years ago. He took me in anyway, filed paperwork, let me make one call. I called my sister. She answered. But when I said her name, she went quiet. Then she said, "I'm sorry. I think you have the wrong number," and hung up. I tried again, disconnected. I tried my bank. My card didn't exist. I tried my email, locked out. I tried looking in the mirror. No reflection, just a wall. No one knows I'm here. No one can know. I left something behind in the hollow, but something else left with me. I don't know which of us is real anymore, or if any of us ever were. But if you ever find yourself hiking the backcountry of Pennsylvania, parked, and you see an unmarked side trail near Route 879 with a broken sign that reads, Lostman's Hollow, ... Don't go in. Don't follow the clicking. Don't trust yourself when you come back, because you might not be the one who walks out.